Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Phil Whitebloom. He's joining us live from the US. He's sales coach and he leverages over 40 years of experience to help you grow your business. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Thank you, AJ. I'm thrilled to be here.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India on this online format, digital format. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will want to understand. You have great experience in sales. And so they will want to understand how to differentiate themselves in sales, especially the people who are in the sales line. So first to understand from you, Phil, is that you worked 23 years with Sony and overall 40 years into this line. How did you survive for 40 years? Because people say, there is a lot of pressure in sales and it is very difficult to survive in that line. Let's go to another industry, another department. Help us understand with that thing. What was it that helped you survive for so long into sales?
Well, I kept my hair, but it turned gray. So that's actually a really easy question to answer for me because I truly loved what I did. It was pretty stressful at times. There's no question about it, especially being in sales management for so long, where you're responsible for the number and communications and all the things that, many of you out there already know what goes on in that area. What really makes it, why I stayed there and while I'm still in there, is because of helping others. That's what selling always is. And it truly is about helping others. And the stories that I could tell about helping different people, from whether it's from the government type things or corporate type of accounts or higher education or medical, all of these areas, being able to provide them with products, solutions, services that help them achieve what they need to achieve their goals, achieve their missions. There is so much satisfaction in that. And even today, in what I do as sales coaching, sometimes it's not about making the sale because there's so many things that have to happen before it, but it's watching people develop their skills and be able to get to talk to people that they weren't able to talk to before or be better at it. And it's so exciting when that happens for me.
Absolutely. For you, and you are the one who is teaching a whole new generation of people who want to understand, get coached by you. So I want to understand, 40 years back, how did you look at sales? And 40 years later, now when you are, coaching a lot of other people into sales line, what is it that they look at in sales? Well, is there a much difference? Has the world changed?
Well, I'll tell you, it's changed quite a bit. Answering your first question, 40 years ago, I was brand new out of college. I had my first job. It was a sales job, and I was running up and down the street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, selling office equipment. And it was intense, and I didn't really look at sales in the way that I did then as I do now because it was all brand new. It was first job, have to be successful at it. It was a very good learning experience because you had to close sales quickly. Otherwise, your competitor was going to be right behind you and close right behind you. So that was really a trial by fire, and that was great. Now, to talk about how sales has changed, it's changed tremendously. The sales process is exactly the same. That hasn't changed. That hasn't changed. I always like quoting Dale Carnegie and everything that he taught. But what has changed is the marketplace, and it's and how you approach it. There's so many ways. So if you go back to my first job in sales, which was in 1980, okay, and now we're in 2023. That was a long time ago, right? So what we didn't have then is we didn't have the internet. We didn't even have computers. In fact, one of the first products I sold was a dual cassette answering machine. one model for $500, another model for $700. And you have the most simplest applications on your watch that'll do way more than that did. So you didn't have any of that technology. So and that all came. You didn't even have voicemail yet on your phones. So that all came later. But then 9/11 happened. Okay, so 9/11 changed the world and how you get into businesses. You can't just get in as easily as you used to, especially when I was running the government business for Sony for so long and part of it for so long. And then even moving further on, we had a financial crisis, at the .com bust at the turn of the century. And then we had another big financial crisis in 2008, 2009 timeframe, and then we had COVID, and now we have Zoom, and we have this technology that you and I are sharing today, all the way across the world, very, very easily with no jet lag. So these are all the things that impacted selling and how you get in to see customers and how you communicate with customers, but then also how far you can get to see customers. But as I said, the process is always the same. The challenges are in how you reach those potential prospects and customers.
Right, right. In terms of customer expectations, has this changed, or is it that customers, in terms of solving the problems of customers, their queries, has that changed? Because what I understand is that earlier, if there was a problem and you as a salesperson, you could bring it to the customer care, or even the customer directly reach to the customer care, there would be more people involved into solving that problem in whatever way they could. Nowadays, you make the sale, create the best of impression, there is a problem with the product, you are out of the system, and the customer care exists in the form of bots. How does that work in today's time? Is that the change that had happened, that the salesperson is nowhere in the system now and he has no influence after he has made the sale? He's only under the pressure of making more sales and has nothing to do with the customer who he has tried to build a great relationship with?
So the relationship with the customer, and it varies a little bit depending on where in the world you're at, and how that culture does business. However, the relationship is every bit as important. It is so important. AJ, what has really changed is when you use the word expectation. I like that you use that word, because expectations set the boundaries for everything. And what's really important is not my expectation. It's the expectation of you, the customer, the prospect. And for the salesperson has to know what that prospect's expectations are. So what's changed here, AJ, is speed. So a long time ago, you used to be able to type things up on a typewriter and you get it back to them, you drop it in the mail. And sometimes it might take, 5 days for it to get to somebody. And so they say, we need this or we need that. Now everything is instantaneous. The demand for if somebody procrastinates and takes a long time to get around to calling me or calling another salesperson or a support person, and their problem is getting worse, well, their procrastination then becomes the problem of the solution provider. And that today people grow up in that environment. They don't know any difference. They have text messages. They can respond right away. Now, on the other side of that, the technology has made things so much better, because you don't necessarily always have to throw somebody in a car or on an airplane or on a train to get out to where they need to go. You could get right online like we are today, and you could dial into people's systems. So many things are connected, and you could do all kinds of troubleshooting. But once again, the expectation is there. The part, AJ, that is really important that hasn't changed at all is quality and regular communications. That differentiates a person who a business wants to continue to deal with and somebody who they're looking to change out. Because even if you're not solving their problem right away, but if they know you're working on it, you're doing quality communicating with them, keeping them posted on the updates, asking them questions, they don't They're not sitting there wondering if you're doing anything. So the differentiator in this case, which is really important, which I coach all the time, is that if you promise something, hit that date. If you're not going to hit that date, let them know as soon as possible, not by email, because they may never pick up that email, right? Get on the phone. They still work. Get on the phone and call them up and leave a voicemail at least, or send a text message and make sure that you get some kind of reply. If you don't get a reply, don't assume they heard it. And then if you miss their date, they're going to assume you failed. They have no idea that you're still working on it or what the situation is. So how did I do in answering that question? Was that good answer for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so let's dig it deeper, because I want to understand the expectations of, what is it that salespeople want to learn from you, want to be coached from you at? Because see, you will look at the world in a different manner. They look at the world in a different manner. But since they come to you, obviously there is a lot of synchronicity that I can learn a lot from Phil. So what is it that they come to learn from you, and what is it that you teach them, and how do you teach them? Is there a difference of expectations here on the sales front?
Yes, there is. And there are so many parts to the sales process. We talk about, it doesn't matter who the sales trainer is, whatever, everybody, the process, they all say the same thing. Dale Carnegie was attention, interest, conviction, desire, and close. But within there's thousands of things that go on. And you would think that some things that seem like common sense and simple, they're not. And I'll give you an example on my group coaching that I was doing just this week. The subject was following up. And you would think that would just be basic and fundamental, right? But the questions I had coming were excellent, and from people who have been doing things for a long time, and they were asking about following up. You would think that would be fundamental, right, AJ? And it is, except the questions were like, how often do you follow up? When do you become obnoxious about following up? How do you what should you do when you're following up? And that was one example of something. There's another, closing sales. That's always a big one. How do you ask for the order? And I love telling a quick story about when I was a young salesperson and I was talking to the director of purchasing of a well-known company. And I asked her, what is it about salespeople that really bugs you? And she says, when they don't ask for the order. She said, I know why you're here. Do you know why you're here? And she goes, sometimes I want to buy products from people who are calling on me because I see salespeople all day long, but I don't buy them because they don't ask for the order. And I never forgot that. 40 plus years later, that's truly fundamental. And how you do that and go about it is really important. And to continue answering your question is on the complete other side of that, which has truly changed over the decades, is how do you get to see somebody? How do you call? How do you act? And we have networking meetings now where you get together with other people. Those things didn't really exist like they do today, and that is always a big, big topic. And helping businesses and salespeople to grow into different marketplaces from where they're out of their comfort zone. So this conversation, AJ, we could go on for days. You probably have to take a break for your audience, but it's really a big one, and it varies, and that's what I do as a coach. I sit there and I meet with the people up front to find out what their needs are, where their problems are, or what they want to do. And I have to tell you, it's fascinating that what I generally get hired to do is not what I end up doing for them down the road, because I learn and they learn that their problem that they thought they had or the situation they thought they had was not really the problem. It was something else. And sometimes in one particular case, AJ, it's not even their salespeople or anything else. It was their management. It was their sales management that was the problem. And they had a complete lack of process, and it was causing morale issues and pricing problems and inconsistencies. And so I work with the company to put those processes in place. So it is very broad and very vast. And that's why when we talk about, the 40 years of experiences, lots of people have 40 years of experience, but 40 years of experiences, really help me to help them. And so
Absolutely, absolutely. So earlier, did you have problems uh, with this sort, like the manager problem, the leadership problem, or earlier they were more aligned in spite of having less number of tools? People were much more aligned in that whole process, and now people do not, in spite of having all the tools. Is that the problem in the sales process, or is there a bigger problem somewhere else?
once again, there's many answers to that. I would say the overall thing comes back down to communications, though, from either a leadership situation or going the other way. If you don't get quality information, you can't make quality decisions as a manager. And it's the same thing looking at customers. You know, the computer saying garbage in, garbage out. And it's also not just the quality of the information coming, but it's the timing of it. And so this is really key, AJ, to your very good question there, is being on time with the information, not just getting back to somebody, but when you're asking for help from somebody else. Sometimes you're asking for help from your customer. Sometimes you're asking for help from your management. Sometimes you're asking for help from the people who work for you, right? And you have to be very clear on what it is, and you have to ask the most important question. You have to ask them about repeating back to you what I just said as far as the direction or what I need to make sure they understand it. Because if I say, do you understand that? They're going to do what you're doing. They're going to nod their head, right? But that doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you if they understand it. But you say, hey, can you repeat back to me what it is I'm looking for here? And then they say this and that. You can say, right on target. Thank you very much. Or you can say, well, I guess I didn't explain it well enough. And words matter and how you do these things. And then it's that quality communications that will make things much, much better. And the last part I'd like to say on this is when it comes to communicating, email, this is me saying this, email is not a communications tool. It is a way of disseminating information. And if you send something out on email, one is you don't know if it was read, you don't know if it was understood, you don't know how it was interpreted. Are they angry at you because they thought you were yelling at them? Or, you wrote this long email and what you were asking for was so far down, they never got to it because their attention span, like most people, is very short. So get to the point. And so how you communicate, the tool you use is really important in that area.
Right, right. I will come to this whole question of how to differentiate, how one can differentiate themselves in sales. But before that, I want to understand your mind, Phil. Why did you come into sales coaching? What is it that you wanted to offer to people? Because sometimes a lot of people think they already know a lot of things. Why would they want to learn anything from you?
Yeah, so what was really interesting is when I set up my company, which is called Been There Consulting Services, it wasn't focused yet. I did this, I retired. And after all these, decades, I retired, and I tell everybody that I'm going to have a business card made up that says I am a retirement failure. So because now I'm full time with this really nice business and getting to speak with you and your audience. And what happened is last year, when I was talking with people and saying, what do you need? Sales coaching came up. And it resonated immediately. In my first meeting where I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, I have 3 clients that came from that introduction, just that fast. So then I had to go and build all this infrastructure and everything else. And the difference here, AJ, between coaching and training, right? Training is really important, sales training, and there's lots and lots of great sales training programs out there. And there's really quite a few great sales trainers throughout the entire world, right? And what they do is very important, but it's very much a linear process. You start at one end, how do you get in, and you work your way all the way through to how you close. That may not help anybody, certain individuals or anybody with what they need right today. So coaching, from what I do, and this is why I do it, is because it's in real time and it's in the moment. So with training, you don't get coaching, but with coaching, you always get training. So I will work with the individuals and with their businesses on what they need today to give them a return on their investment right after the first meeting, however you set the expectation, right? And then the training will go along depending on how long you have the contract and you're working with those people. But it makes a big difference. And that's why I do it, because the coaching, I could jump right in and start helping them right away. And plus it takes a little time for me to learn what they're doing, because everybody's situation, no matter how many similarities, are all unique to that person and those companies.
Right, right. And now this big question of, how can one differentiate himself or herself in sales? Because if you look at almost small, mid-sized, big companies, everywhere you have a sales department, sales
Right.
process maybe,
Right.
but the customer is almost one customer is buying from so many companies, and he faces that different sort of sales people from different companies in his day-to-day
Right.
life as a customer. Somewhere it's a very good experience, somewhere it's not a good experience. My experience, especially in the last 6 months, is that of several companies I have faced, only bots. People don't want to respond to to your requirement, or if you have any particular grievance about a product or a service. In terms of, so I wish that there was a salesperson or anyone who would at least try to understand a customer's problem in terms of their own understanding. They also want to be, they are good people, sales good people. How can they differentiate themselves in today's time, especially when they meet a customer like me who has issues with a product or service, which is obviously they have not manufactured it, but then how can they differentiate themselves in a positive way in today's time? Is there any step-by-step process for that, Phil?
Yes, there is. And I want to start this conversation out by saying, let's just believe that all products are good products. There's no bad products. So how do you differentiate if everything's good and everything will solve your need, right? So the differentiation is the salesperson. And the salesperson, and this is not, you should never treat any customer, client, prospect as if this is a one-time thing and you'll never see them again. Okay? So what differentiates people is how sincerely interested they are in the people they're working with at the business and in the business themselves. And I'll give you some examples of some of the things that have worked for me. I had some customers for more than 30 years. In fact, if they weren't retired, they'd still be my customers, all right, or giving me referrals. And even if I didn't have products that they needed because I had changed companies, that when it was outside of what they did, they still talked to me and called me, and I called them and stayed in touch. So here's a really good example. It's about going over and above all of the time and doing things that are unexpected to benefit the customer. And I had one of the I'm writing a book right now on handling objections and things like that. And in there, I talk about stories, but one of the things to talk about with going over and above is when I got moved to Washington, D.C., and I went into a very well-known government office, and I walked in there and I saw that they had my products. I'm brand new in there. I had my products there, and they were on the floor, and they were new. And my competitors' products were installed, and they were running. And I said, like, what happened? And they were really unhappy. They said, it wasn't working right. We didn't get good support. This was that. And so we just pulled them out, even though they were new. We just pulled them out. We put them on the floor and replaced them with your competitor. And I was like, whoa, I was blindsided. I had no idea this was coming. And so I said, okay, let me look into this. Let me see what's going on. And I found out that there was a bug in the product, and it wasn't communicated with them. So I said, here's the deal. Even though you purchased it from my competitor and you're running, okay, I'm going to take these all back. I'm going to have every one of them fixed. And there was quite a few. I'm going to have every one of them fixed, and I'm going to return them because they're going to be something you could use in a different location at another time. And that's it. And I did that within 2 weeks. It was completely done, and it was back. And they were so happy that I had done that. They didn't ask me to do that or anything else. I didn't ask them for anything. I just wanted, try and get back in the door. And another couple months later, they gave me an order for a new product. And then from that point forward, AJ, over many years, I did over $7 million with that customer, and I own that customer. through 5 presidents. And it was really, really, really a great story. And I have other stories too on the other side where, you know, my company and stuff, we had the best products and everything else, but we would lose to the better salesperson in a different company with a lesser product. And he was just really good at what he did. He knew he had a lesser product and he acknowledged it. And he would talk to it, but he said, but you don't need all that stuff from the higher end. We could do this for a lot less money. And he would win over and over again because he was so good. He was the differentiator. And the bottom line was be there for your customer when they're not buying something. You know, just don't show up when they're buying something. Call them up, see how they're doing, see if there's anything you could do for them. Bring them an idea for something that you may have seen someplace else that would benefit them. They appreciate it so much. They remember these things. And I have to tell you, I was working on a very large sale for NASA, the space agency. And then the second shuttle disaster happened and everything got shut down for 2 years. And then when it came back around and they started doing business again a few years later, they said, Phil, we want to tell you something. The reason you're here and we're about to give you this very large order is not just because you met all the technical specifications and you evaluated very well, but you were the only one that was here calling on us in our department while we were shut down for more than 2 years. You were still just checking in on us when we weren't buying a thing. And that differentiates the salesperson from everybody else. And even if the other product might have been a little better and everything else, they know that they're going to get better service from that salesperson that is there even when they're not needed. It's a big deal.
Absolutely. So the basics remains the same even after 40 years.
Yeah, the fundamentals have not changed. And I could stand by here and believe that they will never change. It's the technology changes, the speed changes because of the technological needs, how you talk to people, how you get in, how you find customers just changed completely differently than it was, 15 years ago, 25 years ago. It just changes because the world changes and you have to be there and be ready to change along with how that's going on. And it's a skill. And it is truly a skill. It is not natural. It is natural for people to be good people and to follow up well because they care. But the skills of how to ask open-ended questions, how to ask for clarifying questions, how to drill down to find out what they need, just because they tell you this is what they need, if you don't know why they need it, why it's important, what will be the long-term benefit to them or the immediate short-term benefit, because then you're just selling to a feature. But if you understand that they're trying to position their company to sell their company, so they need to drive this revenue up, to bring their, for their balance sheet and everything else, or if they need to overcome a past bad thing that happened in their history, and why is that important to them? Because they need to bring their credibility back up. There's so many different reasons to help. And I have one client, she's got no problems. What she's doing is she wants to expand her businesses into new markets. So it's a whole different kind of thing where I'm working with them and training and coaching them on how to approach these different kind of businesses for their services that they've never worked with before. So it's awesome.
Right, Phil. I want to understand, one secret from you, your secret of uh, handling one particular account, especially you manage federal, state, and local government business for 30 years and personally involved with managing the White House account for 5 presidents.
Right.
Presidents came and went, but
Right.
you continue to manage that White House account for almost 30 years.
Right.
What was the secret of your success when that can be a very stressful job? Companies can change you. Let's bring in another person, but you continue to be there. What was the secret of that continuity? Was it that you had access to the president, or maybe he had some problem, some bug in his device you managed to solve?
Yeah. So I didn't get to work with the president, any of the presidents themselves directly, but I work with their people, their teams, in their different areas. And I was primarily tied to an organization called the White House Communications Agency, or WACA. And So what's really interesting there, and it wasn't just me, everything, you have a team, right? There's, in golf, it's kind of all about you, but in everything else in life, it's a team. So there was a time when I was the salesperson where I was the salesperson. Then I was the sales manager, and I had other people that worked for me, but I was always personally involved in not only that account, but other, really important strategic accounts. And what happens though is that the people that you work with in this particular environment, most of them are non-political people. They don't change with the administration change. They're career employees, or they're military that's been assigned there for 7 years. And so you work with these same people throughout. What changes is how the current, if you look at the president and their chief of staff and everybody as administrators, how they run their businesses. And every administration ran it differently, and the career employees had to kind of move within that world, but they knew how everything worked. They knew how the lights turned on, they knew how they turned off, they knew when to do things and what, and because they didn't care about the politics. Their job was to support what the needs of the White House were, particularly the president and the vice president in this particular area. So by knowing that they could call on me, and there was quality products that they could get me at any time, literally, especially with technology improving, they could call at any time, day or night, weekends, and we'll move and we'll respond for them. It made a huge difference. So it carried on and carried on and carried on through all those years.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is indeed a great achievement, especially, with such a prestigious account. There would be other competitors always looking for their foot into the door. And that is where, any small mistake, any sort of a thing that they can find, and they will also must be having their own connections within that whole system so that they can also get into this whole process.
You're right. And it's a matter of really understanding the sense of urgency. When they need something right away, it's not a joke. It's not just somebody saying, I need something right away. And usually there was something that happened or whatever, and they need something right away, and you're closed and you have to try and find things. I mean, these kind of situations happened all of the time. There are different world events will happen. 9/11 was a giant one. And you have to respond. And if you have good people around you, which I was very fortunate, I worked for very good companies with very good people who really cared, and they made the difference. So, because if I didn't have those people around me, there's no way I could sit here on your podcast with your audience and say it was all me. No way. I had great people that worked with me. I worked for really good people, and they knew what they did. And if they didn't care, I couldn't help the customer no matter what. I could be there and I could be empathetic and sympathetic, but I couldn't help them. But because I had so many great people that worked with me, that I was able to, leverage the best of the best to take care of the customer. And they knew that. So like the joke was, you'll call Phil, you're not going to get the solution, but he'll go figure it out and find out and get back to you, because I'm not the super techie guy. So.
Lots of learning there, Phil.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people can learn a lot from you, especially those people, salespeople, who would like to make a difference for themselves into this line. So those who want to know more about you, want to be engaged with you professionally, what's the best way for them to do so?
So the best way is for them to go directly to my website. They can see what's going on, and you can also reach me through there. And I'm also going to give you my personal email address. So the website is been there, BENTHEREC as in consulting, S as in services.com. So it's BeenThereCS.com, and there's a contact us page in there, and that'll work. And it's always being updated. There's new things going on there. Your podcast here will be on there. And the other thing is, if you want to send me an email directly, you could just send it to Phil, PHIL, at BeenThereCS.com. And I will definitely respond. I'm going to try and be really good about half business day response at the latest. So I really appreciate you asking me that question.
With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.